Hey, it's Hillary. Join me for a helpful and hopeful chat about mental health in our community. So grab a cup of coffee or tea. This is Wedgwood's Coffee Break Conversation. We're going to have a great chat today because Dr. Dan Gowdy, President and CEO of Wedgwood Christian Services, is sitting down for a coffee break. Thanks for taking the time, Dan.
It's good to be here. Thanks, Hillary.
So for those who may not know you well yet, what do they need to know about you?
Well, I actually grew up in Northern Virginia.
Oh, I did not know that.
Came to Michigan in the mid-'80s, graduated from Grace Christian University with a bachelor's of theology degree. So I got my 2 years of Greek and a year of Hebrew. Don't ask me why. And I was a short-term missionary in East Africa and Central Africa during that time. And great time. Fell in love with West Michigan. Married, got 3 kids, a daughter and 2 boys. And I am POTS, P-O-T-S, to a beautiful granddaughter. And I called myself, because I thought I had that authority, Pops. I wanted to be Pops, but she couldn't say the P-S sound, so now I'm POTS, and everybody in the household is reinforcing that, so I'm POTS.
Joke's on you for thinking you were in charge.
That's true. That's true. So, formative years, much like everyone, my home really set the foundation. Dad was a pastor, tent maker. He always had a secular job and was a pastor, youth pastor, camp director, and so forth, and always found opportunities to push me up front, at least to tell my testimony. And he'd say things really interesting. He'd always say and ask me and others, what is God doing in your life right now? Not what he did or what you hope to do. How is God working in your life right now? And that taught me a couple different things. One is God is working in my life.
Yeah.
And God is still working in this world. And that he's always practiced a philosophy of, busy hands and ready feet. Wherever you are, that's where I have an opportunity to do good and minister. My mom, so I'm the youngest of 4 boys, and many thought that my mom was outnumbered. That wasn't the case. I remember after church, this is in the 70s, so the big beehives and the black horn-rimmed glasses, and somebody asking my mom, Mary Lou, how do you manage, with all those 4 rowdy boys and John, and, with her purse perfectly, 3/4 mast on her arm and humble. She goes, oh, I manage, I get along. I'm screaming behind her going, how do you get along? We're the ones outnumbered here. We all know who's in charge. But I grew up knowing moms are an incredible force.
Isn't that the truth?
Amen.
So you have quite a bit of experience in the social services and nonprofit world in your working experience. What draws you to that line of work?
Well, that's interesting. I took a lot of that philosophy from my dad of busy hands, ready feet. So I started at Hope Network in 1991 while I was still in school, and as direct care, entry-level work, and just practiced that, tried to be faithful to where I was in the moment. Never set out to have a career. Then after a couple of years, direct care, I was promoted to supervisor, manager, director, and I was able to, fortunately, in a growing, increasingly complex nonprofit organization that served people with severe disabilities and mental health issues, to learn not just operations, where I spent about 16 years, but also in administration, where I'm now at about 17 years in administration. So I feel it's interesting to look back and see in your role now and how God has given me certain experiences and some successes and some failures to learn and grow from, and how that has, I think, informed my current role and where I am right now. So I never sought out to have a career, but here I am. And it's been a tremendous opportunity to see within especially Christian nonprofit world, being the presence, the arms, of a loving Jesus.
It's interesting that you have spent all this time working in this field with no intention. It's funny that God just kind of
Yeah.
called you here.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty blessed. Yeah.
So you were kind of called into this field, not really planning on spending too much time here. What do you find most meaningful about this work?
Well, at Wedgwood, it's truly a blessing to know that everything at Wedgwood counts for eternity. The work at Wedgwood is incredibly meaningful. It's a tremendous opportunity to be in this work for such a time as this. People talk a lot about the mental health crisis that's going on right now. And it is a national emergency. And we saw the trend of this crisis that we're in, this national emergency, date all the way back to, I think you could trace it all the way back to 2007 with the iPhone, 2009, the like button. And that changed how we engage online, and it affected our mental well-being. 2010, the smartphones came out with the forward-facing camera. And now the selfies are invented and people post everything online, compare and despair, so to speak. And then Facebook 2012 took over, acquired Instagram, and that increased just exponentially social media and engagement there. So that all leading up to 2020 with increased isolation, loneliness with COVID. So we literally are in the midst of mental health tsunami. And here, in this really important work for such a time as this, where we are in a way on the front lines and for such an important time. James 1:27 talks about the religion, the faith that God considers pure and honors. Take care of the orphan and the widow. And so we have important work, but we have really, really meaningful work right now in the midst of this national crisis that's really wreaking havoc on young hearts and young minds.
We get to be a part of the solution.
Yes, we do. We do have a solution.
I love that. So with a title like CEO, you are in what most would consider like an in-charge kind of position, though apparently not at home when it comes to your granddaughter. But you like to think about that a little differently. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Thank you. I really appreciate the question. And I think that's one of the big misnomers, or should be misnomers, about what real successful organizational leadership in this day and age needs and what followers really want. A lot of people talk about Lord Acton. Lord Acton was famous for his quote that says, "Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely." I take a little different perspective on that. I don't think power corrupts. I think we're all bent. I think we all have a shadow side. What's unfortunate about leadership is you don't have enough influences around you to keep your shadow side intact. I believe a follower-focused mindset gives us our best chance as a leader to achieve ethical leadership, iron sharpen iron, and then at the same time, it also I think gives us an opportunity to really think differently about our philosophy of leadership and what we want to accomplish as a leader and how we go about doing it. As you know, my license plate says followership on it. So what I'm trying to do in there is take it from being a mindset to what does a follower-focused mindset look like in action? We love the term servant leadership, and Patrick Lencioni, the great guru of team and leadership, he says, why are we talking about servant leadership? He goes, there really is no other type of leadership. And Greenleaf, who coined the term, I think gives a great assessment on how we should judge ourselves as leaders. He says, when we assess ourselves, as leaders, as organizational leaders, we need to ask ourselves, do those led, and he actually used the word serve, do those serve become healthier? Do they become wiser? Do they become more mature? Do they become more autonomous so that they in turn might become servants themselves? The success of an organizational leadership, I view my success as an organizational leader is, do those that I have the honor to lead grow and become servant leaders themselves? My success is totally dependent on those that have the honor to lead success.
It's a kind of a big responsibility. It's more, you are responsible for making sure all of these people have what they need to succeed and giving them an environment where they can grow and thrive. And it's less about being in charge, but you taking the ownership of cultivating a lot of other people.
100%. It's, some people call it stewardship. It really is not about who I am as a leader, as an individual, because in this day and age, information changes so quickly that the leader, the CEO, is most likely not the most informed person in the room. So not only is it less about the title and the position and more about those other individuals and their success, it is essential for the leader to be successful. How do we engage? How do we use, as things are changing or rapidly changing, garner greater numbers of people along and towards a shared vision?
Shared vision. I love that. So how can this kind of shifted mindset on leadership impact others, like our teams at work, the clients or customers we work with, or even our own families?
Yeah, I think it has a tremendous amount of impact on that. And if we do this well, consistently over time, we're going to go through a change, a metamorphosis, if you will, about how we function as individuals and how we collaborate as teams. We have a real problem in organizational leadership around the world. Gallup did a poll, and they assessed over like 300,000 organizations. So it's just a crazy number, and millions of respondents. That only worldwide, only 20% of the workforce worldwide is engaged. And they also found out, and I think these two are related, that 77% of organizations identified that they have a leadership gap. So we have people recognize that there's a leadership gap and only 20% are engaged. I think those two are related. If we as leaders, and I think what that poll suggests is that we're too leader focused and not follower focused. It's like we got two groups in our organization going in two separate, distinctively divergent trajectories here. If the leader was not leader focused, but more follower focused, I think we would have a different makeup and different functionality between. We'd have more engaged and more empowered teams. We have individuals leaning in. And I think this follower-focused mindset informs what we think about is what our successes and what are the things we should track look like. Every leadership guru says, in order to be a successful leader, you need to lead successful organizational change. Organizational change is directly related to your success as an organization. Well, how do organizations change? Organizations are made up of individuals. Organizations don't change unless enough of the individuals in that organization change. Right back to the follower, okay? Right back to the individual. Let's go back. Let's go further with that. How do individuals change? What is the catalyst? What is the process that individuals go through? And a lot of it, you got to see it, they got to feel it, they got to engage in a deeper way. I also think that one of the catalyst for change is the moment an individual asks and contemplates a question. Questions are one of the most powerful tools in any leadership box. As good as we are, can we get better? Are these the results that we intended to look for and expect? Or is there something else going on here? Powerful questions. The more positive, and the research says the more positive, more forward-thinking the questions, the more positive and forward-thinking our responses are. How do we ask better questions? I think we can ask better questions when we are willing to challenge our own perspectives. We can all stand around the elephant. The elephant is a problem, right? And we all can look at the elephant through our perspective, like the front or the back or the side, and we can describe the problem or the elephant from that perspective. But sometimes, especially now with how things change so quickly, organization problems are complex, and we need individuals that can engage in a deeper way. The problems aren't this big. They're the size of a stinking elephant.
Yeah.
And so how do we really understand the nature of our problems, complex problems that's in front of us? We need to be willing to either do one or two things, preferably both. We need to be willing to leave our current station around the elephant and be willing to walk around the elephant, individual growth and development, or we need to be able to collaborate with individuals that are on unique and strategic positions around the elephant to describe it, to articulate it, and frame it. So that, I think, is the essence of our ability, what a follower-focused leadership style is. It's, are we growing as individuals? And are we collaborating as teams? If we are growing as individuals and collaborating as teams, we're challenging our perspective, asking better, more positive questions. We are changing and growing as individuals, and therefore we will change and grow our organization. So guided by our mission and our values, when we are able to do those things, develop as individuals, collaborate as teams, we will be a rocket ship, a mission rocket, if you will, that will do tremendous good for such a time as this. That's what excites me. And that's why I think all of this plays itself out. Then you're not directing, you're truly empowering and truly engaging the edges of our organization.
Yeah, I love that. So how do you see a connection between this mindset and Wedgwood's approach to extending God's love through mental health services?
Yeah. Wedgwood, it's wonderful and it's a blessing to work for a Christian organization because we can acknowledge the truth. And the truth is God's love is universal, but it's also very personal. God loves us individually in spite of some of the things we do. Right? And so that message for me, that individual focus, that is exact, it's a God thing, okay? And so when I'm willing to embrace that, hey, wait a minute, I am uniquely gifted. God has, like my dad said, okay, what is God doing in your life? There must be something special there. When we recognize that as a calling, that I am uniquely gifted, and I am here at Wedgwood for a reason, that changes everything. Every new employee that comes to Wedgwood, I tell them that story. You are here. Your mom is right. You're special. But two, you're here with unique God-given gifts and abilities. And your time here, there's going to be an opportunity for you, and possibly more opportunities, to use your God-given gifts to impact another individual's life for the better. It will count for eternity. And there isn't going to be somebody tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, this is that moment Dan talked about. You have to be willing to develop those gifts, hone those gifts, sharpen them so they could be more useful tools for this greater good. And that's what it is. It's a calling. It's a calling that's larger than self. A higher calling, if you will. I
love thinking about that. We all have our unique gifts and talents, and we are all called, to do this work for some period of time in our life. But how cool to think about, like, there's going to be a moment here at Wedgwood that you are the only person who had the right combination of things to do what God wanted to do in that moment.
Yeah. It's truly is an honor. And then you think, okay, wait a minute. Then I need also to be faithful in those moments. I need to rise to those moments. And it's hard work. It's really hard work because there's no assurances that what you put out there is going to be even acknowledged or appreciated by that individual. And that's okay, because who sows, who reaps, who harvests, we're all part of a larger plan that's going on here. And our job as individuals, our job as an organization is one day to answer, we were faithful.
Yep, we plant the seed and leave the rest up to God. I love that. So we know the state of mental health and things that kids and families are dealing with, and the work we do here at Wedgwood can be really heavy. So I guess in the spirit of your dad a little, where are you finding hope?
Oh man, I find hope every day at Wedgwood. When individuals choose to use their gifts for the sole benefit of others, that's a miracle, in my opinion. It's a true miracle. And I see it every day. This just happened a few weeks ago, Hillary. We had a young man who's nonverbal in one of our programs, and he was dealing with some serious behaviors, and the staff didn't necessarily know why. He couldn't articulate it. The nursing team got involved, and they were able to determine that he had a really, really bad toothache. Didn't know how bad it was at the time. It really bad toothache. But because of insurance and how things worked themselves out, there wasn't a way for him to get the care he needed. He needed to, because of his situation, needed to be completely anesthetized. Insurance doesn't pay for that.
Yeah.
So staff were staying with that individual 24/7. Nursing was working their tail off to try to find options for this young man. Day, 2 days, third day went by, and they're struggling. Finally, 12 o'clock on, I think, a Thursday, the nursing director called up our advancement team and just says, hey, we don't know what to do, but can you help? The advancement team called a board member who happened to be a resident of Wedgwood years ago when she was a teenager. So she knows what's really going on there. She contacted her husband, who happens to be he runs a charter service for planes. And evidently there is a group of dentists in West Michigan that are plane enthusiasts. In the span of a few minutes, there was 30 to 40 doctors, dentist, on a text message talking about this young man.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So that call went out at 12 o'clock. A couple hours later, one dentist said, hey, if you could get them into my office, I have a anesthetist. They'll be there. I can do the procedure, do the surgery at 3 o'clock. He was there in the chair at 3 o'clock, and he had a surgery. It was real difficult. Evidently, the nerves were exposed. Every time he inhaled, it was just, the pain was just searing right through his whole body. And so that is such a Wedgwood story.
Yeah.
So here you have the frontline staff caring for an individual, and he's not treating them very well because he doesn't know what's going on with himself. You had the nursing department figuring out what's going on there, reaching out, thinking outside the box, reaching out to the advancement team. The advancement team, not program team, the advancement team engages the board engages the community. And within the span of 3 hours, that young man had a surgery and was well. I visited him like a day and a half later when anesthesia was off, and he was out in the play area enjoying his time like nothing had happened. What gives me hope is seeing all of that come together. People not wanting to get the glory for it, but just being faithful with what they could offer in the moment. And God somehow brought it all together.
That's such a beautiful example of how Wedgwood staff and the community all work together. And it feels a little bit like a slice of heaven, minus the toothache, of course. But that's such a beautiful story. And selfishly, I love this podcast because I get to hear stories like this. I get to talk to the staff members and hear all of the things that they are doing and all of the ways they are using their gifts to further God's kingdom through their work here at Wedgwood. And so I just love it.
And we won't know the full extent of it here. I hear you, and I love your heart. And we won't know the full extent of all that because there's so much of that is happening when no one's looking until we get to heaven. And there'll be people approaching us, approaching friends of ours, our partners, our donors, staff, administration, saying thank you for giving to the Lord at Wedgwood, because I am a life that was changed. Not just that life, but their children's and children's lives as well.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing to think about. So are there things that you want people to know about the state of mental health and children and families in the role that they play in creating brighter futures? Kind of like the example we just shared.
Yeah, I think there's well, before I get into that, I think we all need to be healthy ourselves. I would just encourage everybody, take a check, and of your own mental health and where you're at. We cannot help somebody else out if we ourselves are not in a position of strength and a position to actually give. We can do actually more harm than good in that respect. But I do think there's three things that I think we could really focus on now and have made some great progress as an organization, but also as a community, and we need to continue to do more. I think the first one is we need to continue to focus on early intervention and prevention within especially at child welfare and family services. And that means taking a lifetime societal impact approach. And what I mean by that is that the things we do preventatively, the things we do early through an early intervention can have a lifetime societal impact much, much greater, multitudinally greater than the initial investment. For example, we have 10,000 kids in Michigan's child welfare system, 10,000 kids. If you take all of that, there's a lifetime societal cost of about $1.8 billion of those 10,000 kids. That's engagement with the criminal justice system is increased, substance use is increased through when you compare kids in the child welfare system to other kids and so forth. And if we took the time to preventatively to find the right resources and the right supports to keep them out of the mental health system or the child welfare system, that individual impact is about $120,000 in lifetime societal impact, future earnings, and so forth. So we need to focus on early intervention and prevention focuses. We also need to continue to look at the individual through the family. And Wedgwood has always been about the youth, but as we focus on the youth, we realize we need to also serve the families well. The families are so important to that. So family therapy and counseling, parental programs, school-based counseling services. And we also need to continue to we've done a lot, but continue to promote integrated behavioral and mental health care. It's interesting. They're doing a lot of screenings at different places. And what they found out is that individuals, this is interesting to me, that go and seek problems with their gut, that they actually have higher issues of mental health concerns.
Interesting.
The body and mind are interconnected and interrelated. And so we need to look at that holistically and treat them as such. The third thing I would say is we need to continue to focus on reducing stigma and increase awareness. Public awareness has gone a lot, much better in the last few years, I think, since COVID than before. That's a good thing. But we need to continue to do more. I'll give you this recent example. There's a PGA professional. His name was Grayson Murray. And for a couple of years, he's been quite open about his mental health struggles, his depression and so forth and so on. And it's been a really good conversation. Unfortunately, Grayson committed suicide last May. So as much as we've come, we need to continue to do more. We need to continue to be open to new approaches. And I think telehealth, I think we pivoted to that during COVID. I think the next iteration, I think, is engaging the technology, even artificial intelligence, and the youth and the Zoomers, the Gen Zs. They are going to be more open to technology and how it integrates with our mental health. So I think embracing those types of technology, increasing access and awareness would be the third area we need to focus on.
And meeting people where they're at.
Meeting people where they're at, what they need, no more, no less.
I love that. Thank you, Dan, for your leadership, for your heart, and for taking the time to have a little coffee break with me today.
Thanks, Hillary. Glad to be here.
Wedgwood Christian Services is committed to creating brighter futures for our community. To learn more about our comprehensive mental health support and treatment, visit our website, wedgwood.org. And don't forget to subscribe to Wedgwood's Coffee Break Conversation podcast on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube so you don't miss new episodes. Stay hopeful, stay helpful, and let's have another coffee break soon.